What would you do? If one day you discovered that the very business you built was treating people differently, judging them just because they didn't have money? My name is Harrison Blake, and I chose to do what no one ever expected. I went undercover as a janitor, walking the halls of my own hotel, to find out the truth for myself. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. It didn't take long for the shine to wear off. On his very first shift, dressed in the worn uniform of a hotel custodian, Harrison Blake, now Hank, pushed his cleaning cart down the marbled hallways of the very hotel that bore his name. The polished floors reflected the chandeliers above, but the reflection looking back at him wasn't the man anyone knew. Not the millionaire, not the owner. Just a nobody. And nobodies, as it turned out, were invisible here. The seasoned staff barely spared him a glance. Those who did let their eyes fall on him wore expressions as sharp as glass, their faces pulled tight with disapproval. A young concierge snorted quietly as Hank passed by, nudging his co-worker with an elbow and nodding toward the new guy. "Must have scraped him off the street," the concierge muttered, not caring whether Hank heard. Harrison did hear. Every word. Down by the service elevator, two housekeepers leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyeing him from head to toe. One gave a short, humorless laugh. "Fresh meat," she said. "Won't last a week. No one offered help. No one asked his name." In the break room, conversation stopped the moment he stepped in. Cups clinked back down onto saucers a little too hard. Backs turned deliberately toward him. No one looked at him. No one cared. No one even bothered to pretend. It wasn't the kind of cruelty that makes headlines. It was colder than that. Quieter. The kind that seeps under the skin and settles in the bones. A long, slow burn of disregard. And then there was Paul. The hotel's general manager walked the lobby like he owned the ground beneath his feet. Impeccably dressed. Smile polished to a gleam. But his smile, Harrison noticed, only ever showed up when there was money in the room. When an elderly couple arrived, modestly dressed, Paul's smile flickered for half a second before vanishing altogether. No greeting? No welcome. Minutes later, a younger guest strode through the doors. Designer sunglasses, gold watch flashing beneath a tailored cuff. Paul was there in an instant, hand outstretched, grin wide, voice syrupy smooth. "Welcome back, Mr. Davenport. Always a pleasure." Harrison stood in the shadows by the column, unseen, watching, noticing. He kept notes, not on paper, not yet, but in the quiet corners of his mind, tallying each slight, each smirk, each time dignity was traded for a bank balance. By the end of the day, the weight of it pressed against his chest. He had known the numbers. He had read the quarterly reports, the satisfaction surveys, the flawless 5-star ratings. But he hadn't known this. Not the way the woman at the front desk glanced through the older guests as if they were made of glass. Not the way the bellhop grumbled about tips loud enough for anyone to hear. Not the way his staff measured a person's worth by the weight of their wallet. No one noticed the janitor standing there, watching it all. No one cared. No one asked. And that, Harrison thought, was the real problem. Because in a place built on smiles and service, there was something rotting beneath the gold trim and polished brass. He had come looking for the truth. And now he was starting to find it. One cruel glance at a time. It was almost too easy to become invisible. In the spotless corridors of the Blake Grand Hotel, where chandeliers sparkled like ice and marble floors reflected every glint of gold, no one looked twice at the janitor pushing a cleaning cart. No one cared about the man in faded denim and a threadbare workshirt. Hank, they called him, if they bothered to call him anything at all. But Hank was Harrison Blake. The owner. The man whose name crowned the building in bold, shining letters. And yet not a soul recognized him. They saw only what they wanted to see. A low-wage worker beneath notice. The first few hours on the job were enough to peel back the veneer of elegance and reveal the rot beneath. The concierge barely glanced his way as Harrison maneuvered his cart near the lobby's edge. The young man's lips curled into a smirk, whispered something to the bellhop beside him, loud enough for Harrison to hear. "New guy? Looks like he's straight off the street," the bellhop snorted. Neither of them cared if Hank heard. In their eyes, he was no one. By the service entrance, 2 housekeeping veterans leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. One nodded toward him, chuckling. "He won't last a week." The words weren't cruel enough to spark outrage. No, they were worse than cruel. They were casual, thoughtless, tossed out like scraps from a dinner table. No welcome, no introductions. No one asked his name. In the break room, conversations died as he stepped inside. Muggs sat down with a little too much force. Eyes averted. Backs turned. Silence louder than words. Not once did anyone greet him. Not once did anyone offer help. Not once did anyone care. It wasn't the kind of abuse you could put on paper. It was softer. Slower. A steady drip of dismissal, hollowing out the space around him, hour by hour. Then there was Paul, the general manager. Paul moved through the lobby like royalty, chin high, every stride measured, every smile manufactured. He saved his charm for the well-dressed, the diamond-ringed, the powerful. Harrison watched from the sidelines as Paul ignored an elderly couple standing patiently at the concierge desk. Their suitcases, worn and frayed, sat at their feet, their faces hopeful, waiting. Paul walked right past. But the moment a young man arrived, wearing sleek sunglasses and a Rolex that caught the light just right, Paul lit up. His voice smoothed into honey. "Ah, Mr. Whitman, so good to see you again, sir. Right this way." Harrison stood there, still, silent, invisible. He watched, listened, noted every slight, every sneer, every missed kindness, and with every passing moment, the weight in his chest grew heavier. The numbers in the quarterly reports didn't show this. The glowing guest surveys didn't tell this story. Smiles on brochures couldn't hide this rot. But Harrison Blake could see it now, clearer than ever. A place meant for hospitality had become a palace of privilege. Those without money were invisible. And so was he. No one noticed the janitor standing in the shadows. No one asked. No one cared. And that, he realized, was the real crime, because respect, like service, should never be something you have to buy. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon polish, and something softer. Lavender, maybe. Outside the grand lobby, where velvet ropes guarded the rich and powerful, the service corridors told a different story. Here, the shine faded. Here, the smiles stopped, but not hers. Lily moved through the narrow space with an ease that didn't match the weight of her work. A maid's cart pushed steadily ahead, stacked high with towels and small bottles of shampoo. Her uniform was neatly pressed, though a little worn at the edges, much like the woman herself. Young, but with eyes that held the tiredness of someone who had seen more than her share of hard days. Still, when she smiled, there was nothing tired about it. It wasn't the forced grin of someone doing what they must. It wasn't the tight, polite curve of lips meant to appease a guest. Lily's smile was soft, honest, the kind that felt like sunlight filtering through the cracks of a closed room. She nodded at the janitor in the hallway. Hank, they thought his name was. Nobody else had bothered. But she did. A simple gesture, small but real. "Morning," she said, voice gentle. Harrison, hidden beneath Hank's cap and rough work shirt, blinked, unsure for a moment how to respond. The kindness caught him off guard. After a day filled with side glances, with murmurs behind backs and closed doors, it felt almost foreign. He nodded back, but Lily was already moving on. At the end of the hall, by the water dispenser, an elderly woman struggled with the small plastic cup, her hands unsteady, fingers trembling as she tried to press the button and hold the cup steady at the same time. Drops of water splashed onto the floor. The woman's shoulders sagged in frustration. Lily didn't hesitate. She stepped forward without a word, one hand gently covering the woman's shaking fingers, steadying the cup, pressing the lever for her. "There you go, ma'am," Lily said softly. "No rush." The old woman looked up, startled by the kindness. Then her eyes softened. "Thank you, dear," she whispered. Lily smiled again. Not wide, not showy. Just enough. Harrison stood still, watching from where he lingered with his cart. Watching this simple act of grace. No one else noticed. No one else cared. But he did. He watched the way Lily crouched slightly, so her eyes were level with the guests. How she waited until the woman had finished, made sure she was steady on her feet, before quietly returning to her duties. No fanfare, no need for recognition, just kindness. It was such a small thing, a moment barely long enough to fill the silence between footsteps. But in a place where dignity seemed reserved for the wealthy, where attention followed money and power, that small moment burned brighter than any chandelier overhead. And Harrison found himself asking, not for the first time that day, how can someone shine this brightly in a place so cold? He didn't have the answer yet. But for the first time since walking these halls, something inside him softened. Hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the first flicker of understanding. Have you ever met someone like Lily? Someone who keeps going, not for themselves, but for the people they love? If stories like this speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss what happens next. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The break room smelled faintly of old coffee and industrial cleanser. A humming vending machine sat in the corner, flickering slightly as if it too was worn down by the weight of the place. It was quiet. That kind of soft, late-afternoon hush when the day hasn't quite ended, but the energy has already begun to drain from the walls. Harrison, still wrapped in the disguise of Hank the janitor, sat alone at a small metal table near the back. His cap was pulled low, his posture slouched just enough to match the tired bodies around him. He was learning to disappear well. Across the room, Lily stood by the counter, refilling her water bottle. She looked up, caught his eye, and offered that same soft smile, the one that never seemed forced. She stepped closer, settling into the seat across from him, her elbows resting lightly on the scratched table surface. "Tough shift?" she asked, voice gentle. Harrison nodded, playing the part. "They keep you on your toes here," he replied, roughening his voice again, careful not to let the polish of Harrison Blake slip through. Lily gave a soft chuckle. "Not bitter, just knowing. That's the job." There was a pause. Not awkward. Just quiet. Then, unprompted, she leaned back slightly, eyes drifting toward the window where the late light of the day spilled through onto the floor. "I've been here almost 2 years now," she said, her tone softer. "Never thought I'd be doing this work, but life doesn't always ask you what you planned." Harrison said nothing. "Just listened. I've got a little boy," she continued. "Ben. He just turned 6 last month." Her hand found the small chain around her neck, fingers brushing the simple silver pendant that rested there. She wasn't showing off. She wasn't even looking at him as she spoke. It felt like she was saying the words more to the air than to the man across from her. He's my reason. My everything. There was a pause again, longer this time. The hum of the vending machine filled the space between their words. "People think cleaning rooms is thankless work," Lily went on, her voice steady but quiet. "But I don't mind it. Not really. It pays the rent, keeps food on the table, keeps the lights on." She smiled then, small, real. "And when I get home and see him run up to me with that big, goofy grin, when he wraps those little arms around my neck and tells me he missed me?" Her eyes softened, glistening just at the edges. All the tiredness, the bad days, they just fall away. She turned her gaze back to Harrison, finally meeting his eyes. "Ben's why I keep showing up. Why I give my best, even when no one notices." Harrison swallowed hard. There was something about the simplicity of her words, the quiet strength behind them, that landed heavier than any speech could. It wasn't self-pity. It wasn't a plea for sympathy. It was just truth. Plain. Honest. Unapologetic. For the first time since he'd walked these halls in disguise, Harrison Blake didn't see Lily as just another employee. In that moment, he saw her fully. A mother, a fighter, a woman holding up the weight of the world on her own two shoulders, and doing it with grace. He leaned back slightly, his heart quieter than before, but heavier. The reports hadn't told him about women like Lily, but now he was starting to understand. Paul moved through the lobby like a king surveying his court, back straight, chin high, smile sharp as a blade. But the smile was for show. It only appeared when the right people were watching. The wealthy, the important, the ones who tipped big and talked louder than everyone else. To everyone else, Paul's eyes were colder than glass. A middle-aged couple stood by the concierge, waiting patiently, their clothes modest, their luggage worn at the seams. Paul walked past them without so much as a glance. But then, footsteps echoed behind him. A younger man, sleek suit, Rolex flashing. Instantly, Paul turned, face brightening. "Mr. Jacobs! Welcome back, sir. Your usual suite is ready." The charm dripped like honey. Harrison saw it all, watched from the edges, pushing his cart, invisible. His hands clenched tight around the handle. But it got worse. Across the lobby, Lily was kneeling beside an elderly guest, helping her gather a stack of papers that had fallen to the floor. She smiled softly, patient, kind. Paul's voice cut through the space like a whip. "Lily!" She stood quickly, startled, papers still in hand. Paul strode toward her, slow and deliberate, letting the tension build with every step. "What do you think you're doing?" His voice was low but sharp. "I was just helping. He laughed once, flat, humorless. "You're not paid to chat and play nursemaid. Know your place." Guests turned to look. Some froze mid-step. The old woman shrank back, clutching her papers. Paul didn't care. "Clean the rooms. Do your job. Stay out of sight," he snapped. Then, for good measure, he leaned in just close enough to Lily, his words a hiss. "You're here to serve. Don't forget that." Lily's face held steady, but only just. Harrison stood still. Breath held, his knuckles white where they gripped the cart. The urge to speak surged through him like fire. But not yet. Not yet. The break room felt colder that evening. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence, steady and low, like a warning beneath the quiet. Lily sat at the corner table, hands wrapped tightly around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. She hadn't touched it. Her shoulders, usually squared with quiet pride, now sagged beneath the weight of 100 unseen battles. Eyes fixed on the floor, voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep doing this," she said. Harrison, still in his janitor's disguise, still playing the part of Hank, froze where he stood. The words struck harder than he was ready for. Lily looked up, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion, but steady, honest. Every day, it's the same. The looks, the way they talk to us like we're less than human. She shook her head slowly. I go home to Ben and I tell myself to hold on, to smile. But inside... Her breath caught. She pressed her lips together, willing herself not to break. Harrison opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I've put up with worse, Lily continued, her voice cracking now. I've cleaned rooms after people who didn't see me as more than furniture. But lately, with Paul, with the way things are... She let out a long, shaky breath. It's not just hard, it's cruel. She sat back, eyes distant. I'm done. The words dropped heavy between them. I'm giving notice tomorrow, she said quietly. I'm leaving. Harrison's throat tightened. His mind raced. This wasn't the plan. Not yet. He needed more time, needed more proof. If Lily left now, if she walked away before the full truth was uncovered, everything he had risked, this whole charade, might collapse. But what could he say? He couldn't stop her, couldn't beg her to stay without revealing who he really was, couldn't explain why her presence here mattered more than she could know. So he said nothing, just stood there, hands clenched at his sides, helpless, and Lily, mistaking his silence for indifference, gave him one last look. Not angry, not bitter. Just tired. I thought maybe you'd understand, she whispered. Then she stood, smoothed down the front of her uniform, and walked away, leaving Harrison alone in the flickering light of that too-quiet room. For the first time since he'd put on that uniform, Harrison Blake felt the weight of his plan pressing down hard on his chest. Not as a strategy, not as a mission, but as failure waiting at the door, and he could do nothing but watch her go. The conference room was packed, shoulder to shoulder. The staff lined the walls, their faces tight with tension. Whispers floated through the air like smoke, curling around the heavy silence that followed Paul's entrance. He stood at the head of the room, arms crossed, chin lifted, wearing that same practiced smirk. Confident, untouchable. Until the door opened, Harrison stepped in slowly. No uniform now, no cap pulled low. Gone was the rough posture of the janitor. He stood tall, calm, eyes steady. His presence alone shifted the room. Every conversation stopped. Paul's brow creased, confusion flashing across his face. Harrison didn't rush. He moved to the front, near the podium, and let the silence stretch. Held it just long enough for every eye to turn toward him. Then, with a voice as steady as stone, he spoke. My name is Harrison Blake. The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. The owner of this hotel. A ripple of shock spread across the faces in the room. Some gasped. Some exchanged wide-eyed glances. A few hands went to mouths. But Harrison didn't flinch. Paul, for the first time, looked unsure. His arms lowered slightly. His lips parted, as if scrambling for words that wouldn't come. Harrison's gaze locked on him. I've spent the last several weeks walking these halls, he continued, voice low but commanding. Not as the man in the suit, not from the corner office, but right here, where the real work happens, where the truth lives. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folder, thick with printed emails, staff testimonies, and photographs. These are the reports, the complaints ignored, the mistreatment documented, the guests neglected, the staff abused. Harrison opened the folder, reading aloud specific dates, incidents, Paul's voice on a recorded reprimand, his words sharp, cruel, unmistakable. Paul took a step back. Harrison didn't stop. This hotel was built on a promise of respect, for everyone, not just the ones who can afford it. He closed the folder quietly. Let the weight of the words hang there, unchallenged. Paul's face had gone pale. The smirk was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed stare of a man caught red-handed. Harrison turned toward him fully. "You're done here, Paul," he said, each word measured and final. Effective immediately, the room stayed frozen. Paul stammered, reaching for something to say, but the words caught in his throat. No one stepped forward to defend him. No one even met his eyes. And then Harrison turned away from him, facing the staff, the ones who had watched, endured. "I owe you all an apology," he said, softer now, but no less sure. "For not seeing it sooner, for trusting reports instead of trusting people." He let the silence settle once more. But that ends today. No dramatics, no shouting, just truth. And as Paul stood there, small and silent for the first time, Harrison Blake reclaimed not just his name, but his place at the head of the house he had almost lost. What do you think? Did Harrison do enough to make it right? If you're curious to see how this unfolds, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, support the channel by subscribing. Your support helps me keep sharing these powerful moments with you. The hallway outside the conference room was quiet now, the tension from the earlier confrontation still hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. But it wasn't over. Not for her. Lily stood there, arms crossed tightly over her chest, eyes locked on the man she thought she knew. Harrison Blake. Not Hank the janitor, not the quiet co-worker who listened without judgment, but the owner, the boss, the man who had walked among them in disguise, recording their lives like notes in a ledger. She didn't cry at first. Not yet. Her anger held the tears at bay. "So that's what this was," she said, her voice steady but sharp. "A test, an experiment. Watch the little people scramble, see how the ants behave when the king comes down from his tower." Harrison didn't move. He stood there, frozen beneath the weight of her words, his mouth opened slightly, searching for the right thing to say. Nothing came. Lily stepped closer. Her eyes, bright with fury, met his without blinking. "Was it entertaining for you, Harrison?" Her voice rose, breaking through the stillness. "Was it fun? Pretending to care? Watching us struggle while you took notes?" Harrison's jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Lily!" His voice caught, low, strained. "That's not—" But she cut him off. "Don't," she snapped. "Don't tell me it wasn't. Don't stand there and tell me this wasn't all planned from the start." There was a pause. Long. Heavy. She swallowed hard, the edge of her voice softening, but only slightly. "I trusted you," she whispered. "Ben liked you, and I—" She stopped herself, biting down on the words that threatened to spill. Harrison's eyes dropped. He couldn't look at her. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "Lily, I didn't come here to play games. I came here to find the truth." She laughed once, sharp, bitter. "Well, congratulations," she spat. "You found it." Another pause. Just the faint hum of the air vents above, the distant clink of silverware from the dining room down the hall. Then Lily's voice, softer now, but laced with pain. "Was I just another part of your investigation? Another name on your checklist?" Harrison looked up at her then, eyes red-rimmed, throat tight. "No," he said, barely above a whisper. "You're the only thing I didn't plan for." It was honest. Raw. But it wasn't enough. Lily stood there a moment longer, blinking fast against the tears that finally broke free. She turned without another word, wiping at her face as she walked away, leaving Harrison alone beneath the weight of his own silence. And for the first time, the man who owned the building felt utterly powerless inside it. The suits were gone. No more tailored jackets, no silk ties, no polished shoes clicking across the marble floors. Instead, Harrison Blake rolled up the sleeves of a plain white shirt, the creases in his hands showing clearer now than ever beneath the harsh work lights of the service corridor. It wasn't a grand gesture. There were no speeches, no cameras, no calls for attention. But the staff noticed. On Monday morning, before the sun fully broke the skyline, Harrison was already there, pushing a mop bucket down the same hallways he had once crossed in handmade leather shoes, kneeling beside the same carts the housekeepers used, hauling laundry bags twice his size, sweating through the same cheap cotton uniform. He didn't tell anyone what to do. Instead, he asked, "How can we make this better for you? What would help your job feel easier, fairer?" What have I been too blind to see? One by one, the staff answered. Slowly at first, cautious, watching him, testing him, wondering how long this would last. But Harrison kept showing up. When the dining room dishwasher jammed, he was there, sleeves soaked to the elbows, working alongside kitchen staff to unclog the mess. When a guest spilled wine across the lobby carpet, Harrison didn't call for someone else. He grabbed the towels, dropped to his knees, and cleaned it himself. He didn't lead from behind a desk anymore. He stood next to them, shoulder to shoulder. The meetings were small, informal, not staged, just Harrison sitting at folding tables in the break room, a notebook in front of him, listening as the night shift shared their frustrations, their ideas, their exhaustion. He wrote it all down, quietly, carefully. No promises, no hollow words, just action. And Lily watched. She stood at the edge of the room more often now, arms folded, lips pressed into a line, eyes following him across the hallways as he worked. She said little, but she saw. Saw the way he bent down to pick up trash without thinking twice. The way he stayed late, shoulder to shoulder with the cleaning crew, not because anyone asked him to, but because he understood now, finally, what it meant to really show up. Day after day, the tension in the air began to shift. The glares softened, the skepticism dulled, worn down by the steady rhythm of his effort. Harrison didn't talk about change. He lived it, one shift at a time, one hallway at a time. And though Lily kept her distance, her eyes told the story before her words ever would. She was watching, carefully, waiting to see if this time he meant it. The garden behind the hotel was quiet in the late afternoon, its narrow path curling between low hedges and the soft splash of a small fountain. Here, away from the polished lobby and the judging eyes of management, life felt simpler. That's where Harrison found him, a boy no taller than the broom Harrison had pushed for weeks, crouched beside the flower beds, building a tiny fortress from pebbles and twigs. Ben, 6 years old, bright eyes, full of mischief and curiosity, the same soft brown hair as his mother. Harrison paused, unsure whether to interrupt, but before he could decide, Ben spotted him and waved, quick and easy. "Hey, Hank," the boy called, using the name the staff knew. "Want to help?" Harrison knelt down beside him, easing onto the grass like it was the most natural thing in the world. "What are we building?" "A castle." Ben's voice dropped, serious. "For the ants." Harrison smiled, genuinely, for the first time in what felt like forever. Together they arranged pebbles into little walls, Ben explaining which ant was the king, which was the knight, pointing out the treasure room. Then, out of nowhere, as if it had been sitting on the tip of his tongue all day, Ben looked up and asked softly, "Hey, Hank, do you think you could make my mom smile more?" The words landed softly but hit hard. Harrison's smile faded just for a moment, then returned, gentler now. He reached out, ruffled the boy's hair. "I'll do my best, kiddo," he answered. "I promise." And for the first time, Harrison Blake felt the weight of his choices not as a businessman, but as a man standing at the edge of something more important. The sky melted into soft streaks of gold and violet as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Waves lapped gently at the shore, the tide pulling back like a sigh. Harrison stood barefoot in the sand, waiting. Lily approached slowly, her hair pulled back against the wind, eyes guarded but calm. She didn't know why he'd asked her to meet here. But she came. He said nothing at first. Just looked at her, long enough that she felt the weight of his gaze settle into her chest. Then, quietly, he knelt. No fanfare, no grand gestures, just the soft sound of the ocean, the call of distant gulls, and the two of them standing alone beneath the open sky. "I don't have a speech," Harrison said, voice steady, but his hands trembled slightly where they held the small ring. "I don't have promises to fix everything overnight." A pause. "But I know one thing." He looked up at her, eyes clear, unflinching. "You and Ben, you've shown me what real happiness looks like, and I don't need anything else. I just want the chance to be by your side. Both of you." Lily stood still, the breeze catching the hem of her skirt. She wiped at the corner of one eye, swallowing hard. She didn't say yes. Not yet. "Only this. Show me," her voice soft, steady. "Let me see the man you're telling me you can be." She reached down, gently closed his hand around the ring, and held it there for a moment before stepping back. The sun slipped lower, casting long shadows across the sand. Hope stayed. The celebration wasn't fancy. No grand ballroom, no expensive caterers. Just the staff gathered out back beneath strings of warm yellow lights, paper lanterns swaying in the evening breeze, folded chairs, plastic cups, plates balanced on laps, laughter mixed with the clink of silverware, the easy hum of shared stories. Harrison moved quietly through the crowd, not as a boss, not as a guest of honor, but as one of them, listening, laughing, learning. Lily stood near the edge of the group, Ben perched on her hip, eyes still watchful, but softer now. She hadn't made any promises. She hadn't given her answer. But she was there. And that, for now, was enough. Harrison caught her gaze across the firelight. She didn't look away. The music played on, soft and steady, as the night unfolded beneath the open sky. And as the camera fades, the voiceover returns, warm, thoughtful, leaving the audience with the question that lingers long after the screen goes black. If you were Lily, could you forgive? Could trust be rebuilt after a lie, even one told for the right reasons? Tell us what you think. Share your thoughts below. So, if you were Lily, could you forgive? Could trust be rebuilt after a lie, even one told for the right reasons? I'd love to hear what you think. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you had to rate this story on a scale from 1 to 10, where would it stand for you? Your feedback means the world to me and helps me keep improving these stories for you. If this journey touched you, if you'd like to see more stories like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support truly keeps this project going. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this story with me. I'll see you in the next one.